Well, once again, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Beyond Room 313 with me, your host, Thomas Sheridan, and my co-host, Jason Roma, over there in Northwest USA. Today, as our guest, we have a friend of mine, Neil McDonald, from England, who's a megalithic researcher, author of note. Actually, he's written quite a few books, and they're all great reads. And he's also not only an expert on megaliths of like the UK, Ireland, and Malta, and other places, he's also written books, very interesting books on the Cathars and the Cathar tradition. He also has a mystery school online teaching the tarot and other elements of the Western mystery tradition, which is pretty fascinating stuff when you get into it. And he also is a tour guide and runs tours around the world, actually, well, mostly around Europe, visiting megaliths and also the Cathar locations in southern France and northern Spain. And he's setting up a big conference in England in Samhain, Halloween, the end of October, and there's some interesting people there, including Hugh Newman, who we interviewed the other night. So we're going to talk to Neil all about all these things and get some information on the conference, especially at the end. And I think this will be a fantastic chat because Neil is a bit of a polymath like me, and he likes to cover different subjects. He's not glued into one thing. So great to see you, Neil. I hope you're all safe and well over there in England.
Yeah, brilliant. Good to see you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah. Now, the first thing I want to ask you tonight is what got you into ancient mysteries like megaliths and stuff?
Right in the beginning. Wow, that was so many years ago. It didn't really start with megaliths. That came quite a lot later, but I think it was what calling the mystery schools a desirous quest. It's like that void in you that you feel you have to. Everybody feels it, I think, at some point, if they have a soul. And I tried to fill it with various things like Christianity, and they looked through other religions. And eventually I found the Western mystery tradition, which I think is very much like natural paganism. And I studied that pretty much cracking since I was at school, really. Joined a mystery school and went through all that. And it wasn't until 20 years ago that I went to I set up a tour to the ancient sites of Cumbria, which I knew absolutely zilch about, but somebody was talking about it at a local meeting. It was called New Horizons, and the Smoke of Stone says, I'd never heard of them. So I researched, I went to Waterstones, got a book, and of course it was a Modern Antiquarian, and I went to Long Meg. Yeah, the first Julian Court, yeah. Went to Long Meg, and as soon as I saw it, it was just a bang. I just sat down and thought, wow, all the questions flooded in. And here I am 20 years later, still doing it. I haven't stopped.
Do you like the Modern Antiquarian? I think it's great. A lot of people say it's a bit silly and stuff, but I think it's a really good book.
I think it's wonderful because, Julian comes out with he's very poetic as well, but his ideas seem pretty sound. And it's good to have somebody who looks at the sites and thinks, well, I'm not going to take on board anything anybody else has said. I'm going to look at it myself and make my own view of it. And that's what he did. I mean, the whole idea of the Mother Hills and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
Also, when he did a TV show on Channel 4, because he was a pop star back in the 80s, that's probably how he got the show on Channel 4, the ratings, but he was actually throwing out stuff that, fellas like you and I talk about on mainstream TV, 20 odd years ago. I thought that was amazing that he managed to do that. He was talking about he was talking about like how these people were wearing savages and they dressed in like amazing clothes. And, also he's a very funny guy as well when he's on TV, but he's a highly intelligent man. But I absolutely love that book and TV show. And, so that was a great one he started out with because it's like very friendly introduction into the world of megaliths.
Yeah. And it was weird because I didn't realize that megaliths were a thing you could join and become part of a society of it because I had known nothing. So I did my first 1 or 2 or 3 tours. And it wasn't actually until I went down to Megalithomania, I just saw the conference about megaliths. And that's where I had met Hugh for the first time. And I remember him saying, what was his name? The guy who started Megalithomania, Jean-Michel. Jean-Michel's here soon. Yeah. I said, who's that? You don't know Jean-Michel? No. So that was like a rude introduction to the whole megalithic world. And then you saw hundreds of people interested in the same subject.
Yeah, you dived right in. You dived right into the deep end, and then you discovered they're not only in your own local area; they're all over Europe.
Oh yeah, incredible, Arnie, incredible. Yeah, we sat outside the garden here once. We did a whole talk about the different, brought all the little statues from.
Yeah, it seems like 100 years ago. Probably wasn't even 2 years ago with this bloody lockdown and everything.
Oh, so much has happened since then, hasn't it? It's just amazing. That feeling then was very, very dark and treacly, wasn't it? It was like something was going wrong in the world.
Yeah, we were both very depressed and trying to like light a fire under each other's asses to try and get ourselves going again. It was pretty nasty, all right. Yeah, but it's just a lot of good stuff came out of it. So that's the important thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you're going through a rough phase in the world, don't let it swallow you. Don't let it drown you. But so you have this grounding and tradition in the Western mystic tradition, and then you approach the Megaliths. Did you find that the Western mystery tradition gave you interesting understandings of when you encountered megaliths and ancient and the legends and everything connected to them?
Yeah, but there's a definite connection there, and I felt it straight away. But it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what it is. You will not know a lot more about the traditions, and because they're kind of dead in England. You get a lot in Wales and in Ireland, but we've kind of lost most of that. But the very fact that there was previous civilizations with a previous knowledge, I think that's the biggest thing, because whoever those people that were making those megaliths, they weren't exactly us. They were our ancestors. But they were us, but they had like an idea of physics and engineering and an understanding of maybe the vibrations of the planet, the feelings of the planet that we've totally lost. So that kind of the whole idea that there was a body of knowledge, which is the Western mystery tradition, that has come from the past somewhere, and they're still trying to piece it all together again. It's that the megaliths are like another piece to the jigsaw for me, if you feel what I mean.
Yeah.
Neil, I've been wanting to ask you for months now, because I've been really excited to have you on the show about the roots of the Western mystery tradition as something that is very interesting to me as well, going kind of down a couple rabbit holes and finding what works for me and what doesn't work for me. There's been something about the Western mystery tradition in particular that indicates to me more than certain folk magic traditions. And I was wondering how much of a difference is there between, you were talking about paganism and, I was just mentioned folk magic. And then it seems like the Western mystery traditions or schools kind of do come from something that's been passed down, maybe through like an oral tradition or books that didn't get burned, that, are kept under secrecy from a previous era, from the, these people we're talking about that make these megaliths, or so is that kind of the right path I'm looking at there? That
I think so. Yeah. I think so, definitely. I mean, obviously we don't know where this mystery information came from. It just goes back into the mists of time. But wherever it was, I mean, this whole idea that there's catastrophes where everything gets wiped out, so maybe that happened, and then whatever was left was held, and then of course it goes out throughout the generations and the hundreds of years, and millennia, and then of course you get Christianity, and that forced everything underground. Yeah. So even then you just don't know. You can get the body of knowledge, as much you can get of it and grasp it, and that sort of disappeared and was passed down. I think we're looking at the Knights Templars and again the Cathars and various sort of Gnostic groups, and I think they all had their own bits of it, but of course they weren't allowed to speak of it, and that it started coming back into life in sort of the 1800s, where you get people and the Eliphas Levi and all that sort of thing. Things started coming out, and there was a time in the mid 1800s to late 1800s where he said, well, it was the Masonic orders held this tradition. Obviously, people get there's two points of view about the Masonic order. But anyway, I think they held it. But they got to the point where they said this has to start coming out because life is changing. The society is changing so much, we're going to need this information. So that's another reason why, especially after what we've just been through, that I want to put out what a little bit of it I have, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's finding the beginning is impossible.
Okay, all right. Well, that kind of verifies that for me. And then the other kind of question off of that is you mentioned kind of Christianity in there, and I've wondered, there's these orders, the Rosicrucians, and we talk about Freemasonry, and even with like the original Golden Dawn, like William Wynne Westcott era, that it seems like there's like kind of Christian mysticism in there. But like when I look at the material, I almost see something like it's a bit of a cipher, where it's like if this stuff was considered illegal or unacceptable, so they shrouded things in code words, where if you look at it and you have the right key, if you're looking at a Bible verse in there, that Bible verse might just be a placeholder for something else that you have to go into another book, for instance, or know the keys. Is that kind of the case with some of maybe the, like I was saying, the Golden Dawn stuff and like the
absolutely,
Rosicrucianism and Gnosticism and all that, where it's like, it uses Christian terminology, but it's by no means, the whole idea behind Christianity with, original sin and salvation and all of that. It's just using that book almost like a grimoire, almost like
They added they say everything's got an exoteric and an esoteric level, don't they? And I think Jesus said, I don't follow Christian religion, but Jesus said that I speak in allegory and no other way do I speak, or something like that. And if you read the New Testament, it's pretty much the teachings of the mysteries. If you're willing to look and dig deep and see, because whoever this chap was, if he existed, he would have been an adept, because he just passed on the tradition, another way of passing on the traditions. And I'm sure that the Catholic Church and the Jesuits and all those sorts of people, they know exactly what all this is. They're not hidden at all. But what we've got, I think that the way Christianity, the way I see it, we had our traditions over in the West, and then the Eastern religions or ideas of teaching were passed over. And I think it became the Celtic Christian Church, which I think I would have been quite happy in, really, and it was only later on, sort of, when the Church of Rome intervenes, it was 666 of the Synod of Whitby, that decided, okay, we'll get rid of all that other stuff, and now we'll all be Catholics, or the Church of Rome. So that's what I think we lost it all. But before that, I would have been quite happy, really. I don't think a lot of the teachings, I'm very careful what I say, but a lot of the fundamental teachings are not as old in the Christian teachings.
There was groups like the Chaldees who were kind of intermediaries between Christians and Druids, and they were very influential for a very long time. And they, in fact, they were so not considered Christian that when the Vikings attacked the monastery in Tala near Dublin, they killed all the Christian monks and left the Chaldees alone because they didn't consider them Christians. But there was also been macro and micro catastrophes. Like a macro one would be Christianity. A micro one would be like what happened in England. You were saying, Neil, there about you've lost your traditions. Well, it's you first had the Anglo-Saxon invasion, which wiped out the Celtic Britain thing. Then you had a brutal experience under the Dane laws with the Vikings, and the Danish Vikings came out. And then you had William the Conqueror come in at the harrying of the North and basically genocided everyone north of London. And so it was like, it was completely wiped out. And that's why it's still around in Wales and Ireland. It's kind of funny because it was like the countries got off, Ireland got off easier because the Norwegian Vikings invaded Ireland and they didn't take over, they assimilated. And then the Normans didn't treat the Irish as badly as they treated the English, particularly the north of England. And they assimilated as well. So I think it's one of the great catastrophes of history is this loss of this colossal folk culture in England because of the Anglo-Saxon invasion. Okay, of course, that brought in great things as well, but particularly the Dane laws under the Vikings and then the harrying of the North under the Normans. God knows what has been lost. It's a great tragedy. And that's why we have like Tolkien, trying to restore that with the Middle Earth cycle. It's one of those things in history that drives you mad. Like, what was the English folk spiritual tradition like before the Vikings and the Normans wiped it out? Because it would have been probably very similar. It would have been identical to what they have in Ireland and in Wales.
It would have been just the same, wouldn't it? It is like say it's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy, but it's like one wave after another, isn't it? And it's never really hasn't really stopped, has it?
No.
But no, it is such a shame. It really is.
Well, you see,
all we can see is look around us and see what we've got.
Yeah, and you get these archetypal things. I often think that, like, you look at the tarot. The tarot is a great device for unlocking your kind of your ancestral codes in terms of these things. I mean, you look at the Hanged Man, that would probably unlock the concept of Odin hanging from the Yggdrasil tree, and that would appeal to people of Nordic and Anglo-Saxon heritage who worshipped Wotan and Odin. And I think this is why I find the tarot to be a magical thing. It's like it appeared at just the right time to remind Europeans, no, you have this other stuff behind all that.
Yeah, and I think that because the letters I put up on my academy are based on the tarot, because I think that the wonderful thing about it is that it's pictures and it's symbolism, isn't it? And it's all about waking things through the subconscious mind and through the collective subconscious. Because if you're looking at pictures, that goes straight into the subconscious mind, and symbolism. I mean, this is the only way we can get it back, isn't it? Go back into the ancient memory, which I do believe exists, because it's just a truth that hangs about there. It's like. So I think the tarot is so incredibly powerful, and it's fundamental to me.
Neil, are you familiar with? There's an author, I think his name is Olney Richmond. He's from the Order of Magi. That I want to say it's another one of these books again that's got like Christian symbolism in it that looks like it's some sort of cipher, but it uses the kind of the tarot of the Bohemians through the different. Playing card suit, which I think that came over from China, right, or from the Far East and made its way into Bohemia. But before
certainly do that. I mean, absolutely. Sorry, that was a mistake.
Oh, what just happened? Where's Thomas coming from? But
the voice from
yeah.
No, I hadn't heard of him, but the whole Christian thing, it's blended in, hasn't it, with everything now? Because I think even the new sort of paganism is very much goes back to that Abrahamic tradition, and it's angels and all this sort of thing, like banishing the angels on the pentagram and all this sort of thing. It's like instead of going back to the original tradition, they've used what they've got, and it's also a tradition of Christianity.
Yeah, it's almost like a little bit of. It's like almost like a proto-chaos magic kind of thing. We're taking archetypes.
And it's weird, isn't it? Because the church would totally see it as evil, yet they're using the church as their base.
Right. So it's like they could get around whatever heresy laws by, no, look, Grandma, whoever's looking at your books. No, it's got Bible stuff in here. No need to.
Yeah, some real angels and everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No. It's good. It's kosher. It's not going to. There's no need to persecute. But it seems like again, it's like a template where you can take whatever angel names or whatever superheroes, Spider-Man or Gabriel or whatever, and substitute those things in, because it's still talking about archetypal resonance in there, and it's the template.
Exactly. Yeah. It's still, if you're using the same archetype for that particular thing, then I don't suppose it matters really that much, does it? Because whatever planes there are, that would resonate with it, would it? It would be the same thing.
Yeah, like with Crowley and the star ruby compared to the lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram, where he just takes his thelemic archetypes and takes the Golden Dawn ones out that are more Christian and puts in everything in Greek and uses his own mythology in there, but it's that same kind of operating template of putting the magician, the neophyte, and into their own standing on their own column, so to speak. But okay, but yeah, I was just gonna say that book though by Oldie Richmond seemed pretty cool because it's like, I don't know, pre tarot with the playing cards. I don't think they have anything in there about the major arcana. It's just the 52 cards, I want to say, and that's
the major. That's the normal playing cards, isn't it? Yeah, I think that it came, didn't they, to hide it. That's right.
Yeah. Right, and it's just real interesting. So I got a copy of it, but it seems like it's got to have some kind of other work that goes along with it to tell you how to decipher all of it, because otherwise it's just kind of gibberish. But there's some cool numerology in there, but I just curious if you'd heard of it.
Thomas is the expert on the minor arcana. I mean, I don't use the. I mean, if you look at the Kabbalistic tree, all the cards are on there, but it's only the Cipher, the main circles which obviously you know about, that I use, but all the minor arcana are the connecting. I know it's the other way around, isn't it? The connecting cards are the major arcana, and all the minor are the Ciphers.
Okay.
Which so that's a totally different thing that I concentrate on. But same idea. I mean, tarot is powerful stuff.
Yeah, cool. Oh, Thomas, I think you're muted.
Sorry. What you were saying there, Jason, about archetypal swapping, I stumbled upon a website a while back of a guy in America who was taking Thelema rituals and Golden Dawn rituals and replacing the entities in that, or the gods and goddesses in that, with Celtic pagan ones, just to see, and of course it transferred beautifully.
Right.
So it's you could do it with Marvel superhero comics. You could do it with anything. You're taking the force of what the archetype represents. So I think that was another beautiful thing about the tarot, is that it's sort of like it took away from dogma and opened up the esoteric into a more artistic thing.
Yeah. It's like an insurgency within the orthodoxy. There's these templates that work within the orthodoxy, so to speak, but it opens up a new way of thinking for someone who's been conditioned within the church, within whatever prevailing orthodoxy it is. So yeah, same thing can be done now with Star Wars characters or Marvel or something for the younger generations, and but as long as it doesn't turn into what's it, the Astaru, the kind of thing that's like this neo-paganism that's basically just Christianity again, using pagan or Nordic archetypes, where it's like with that one it is the orthodoxy with paganism plugged in to fill in the gaps.
I mean, I was listening to sorry, Neil, Grant Morrison had invoked had brought John Lennon into manifestation in his living room, and it was John Lennon's head floating in the middle of the living room, spinning around. And you could see what was happening. He was invoking Jesus Christ. He had turned Lennon into another Christ-like figure, and so he was right back to Christ. It was an interesting experiment and everything, but he had basically turned back to Christianity. It was really a weird thing, but that's what he was doing.
Yeah, especially with.
I was going to go
Lennon.
back to the whole archetypal thing, going back to the tarot. One of the teachings that I went through was the origins of the tarot, which of course nobody really knows. But the teaching was that there were adepts came from all over the world, and they used to meet and try and build this body of knowledge up, and to kind of instead of using people, a particular person, they would use the symbolism. That's how the tarot came. They said, what we'll do, instead of talking a particular god or a particular being, we'll just make symbolism and pictures, and the symbolism will resonate with that particular archetype. That's why you ended up with the pictures and symbolism. So instead of actually using a particular god like Buddha, there'll be something in there that would represent his archetype.
Well, I'll tell you, that's the only thing that works for me in terms of the origin, because it's the only thing that explains why you have this diversity of symbols, why you have, Vedic and Hindu, type symbols, if it's a death card, Kali, and other things in there, and the same, and also could also be Shiva as well. And you also have like the way the Papas and the Emperor are Eastern Orthodox, You have Votan, as we were showing in the Hanged Man, and to me that's the only way that you could possibly explain. The tarot was too perfect and arrived too fully formed. And of course, Italy at that point, you remember, it was at the end of the Silk Road. And so all people from all over Europe and Asia would have been arriving in places like Turin, which is where they manufactured them. And they would have been sharing these ideas in a kind of a boiling pot of esoteric knowledge. And that's the only thing that works for me is that literally people got together from all over Asia and Africa and arrived in Europe and arrived in Italy and came up with this thing.
When they talked about the libraries of Alexandria, there they got burnt, and then it was Paz in Morocco, where everything was, the center went to there. So that would make sense, would it, from North Africa, and then you just across the Med on the Silk Road, the trade routes, aren't you?
Yeah, and you would have had like the Silk Road thing. You would have had Italian merchants, and the Silk Road guaranteed safety of passage all the way to Peking, and deep in China. And so along the way, they would have been meeting Turks, Indians, everything, and this is how it happened. And it all came back to Italy. I mean, I was in the original tarot factory. Well, I wasn't in, I was outside in Turin. And I really did feel like this was ground zero. This is where it happened. This is where it began.
Those are amazing, those cards, aren't they? The Italian ones, they're wonderful.
Oh, I love them, yeah. Now, you're the second person we've had on here. We had a lady called Amanda Marianne Radcliffe talking about the Cathars. Now, I know you have a great sort of spiritual love for that tradition and that world, and you've obviously got some kind of connection to it at a very deep spiritual level. I know that from listening to you talking about it personally. How did that come about into your life?
Right, the Cathars. Well, it was the Holy Blood and Holy Grail, really, I think, and people just speaking about it. And about the whole, at that time, that group I was in, people were mentioning it. So I thought I'll just read. And it's another one of those things that I started reading it, and it kind of just took me over, really. It's that familiarity, isn't it, again? You think, look, with the Templars and the Cathars, I don't know what it is, but I feel associated with it. Well, I kind of call myself a Gnostic, but not a true Gnostic.
Yeah.
Just Gnostic in the sense that of knowledge, and that I'm not taking anybody else's teachings. I want to do because I take them bit by bit, but I take the ones I want to build my own spirituality up. And I think that was kind of their tradition as well, and also the duality and dualism traditions. And it's just beautiful, really. It was so advanced that it had to be killed. You know what I mean? And you go across there to. It's like a spiritual home, really, in the Languedoc there. And it's just so beautiful. The landscape just feels spiritual. As I drive in, I like to drive all the way down because it feels like a pilgrimage. And when I arrive, you just feel that spirituality in the air. And it's as if, how could something this beautiful have that wonderful teachings as well? It had to be squashed. It was too good for the world, really.
Yeah,
but it was so advanced, so incredibly advanced. But of course, the Church of Rome, they couldn't allow it to exist.
Oh yeah, I got mad into Holy Blood, Holy Grail when it first came out too. Although I went a different way, I took more of an interest in the Knights Templar in Scotland and the Sinclair family, and that's something I want to explore a bit more in the future. I went north, you went south, but I think that those books. There's been a lot of kind of people slagging them off in the years since, but I think those books have there's lots of fellas and women like us who are on this path now because of Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
Well, yeah.
I'm sitting on a subway in Manhattan going to work, devouring it, and then devouring it, and then eventually looking around, seeing other people on the train with the book. It had a tremendous effect on people.
Yeah. I tell you, it's as if. Right, okay. It's then again tied up with this mystery tradition, this bundle of information, and it's as if they want it to come out. They want it to come out, because if you think now, if you said to people, "Oh, it could be that Jesus was married and had children," oh yeah, right, okay. But then it was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was earth-shattering information.
Yeah.
And it's like the whole Priory of Zion thing.
Yeah.
They appeared and they put out some information. It's like you go to court and you say, well, that person's known to have killed 5 people already. So you can't say that. Strike it from the register. You can't, can you? It's out.
And
they come out and then this.
It covered so many things, like the French Secret Service in World War II, and the mystery schools and all this, and all these underground esoteric orders who worked in espionage and stuff like that. Something I've always been very interested in. I mean, the book was like the best. It was like the best read ever, because it covered so many tremendous avenues that you could go off and explore by looking for books on these subjects yourself. It was magic. It was magic, actually.
I tell you, the thing that really grasped me was the whole Rennes-le-Chateau story.
Yeah.
And I went deep into that. And it takes you off in every possible direction. It's impossible to explain to people. Look just how incredibly deep that story goes. I mean, it takes you through the Habsburgs, through the Templars, through all the different mystery traditions, through the Christian church. And he was, Saunier, Saunier, the priest, was obviously a Rosicrucian, or he was definitely a member of some sort of adept to some tradition, and I think a grand master of a tradition from the way he died. And so that was another thing, and it's all tied in together in that one area.
Yeah. And not long before that, I had read In God's Name by David Yallop about the assassination of Pope John Paul I.
Oh, yeah.
The Propaganda Due and Freemasonry. And those two books kind of dovetail perfectly, because you can see the same wicked forces that killed the Templars, destroyed the Cathars, were still in operation, funding groups like the Red Army faction to blow up train stations in Verona and stuff like this. So the church get its cheap land, or unbelievable stuff, like dark stuff. And you really saw it. The two books went very well together to show the monstrosity of the Vatican.
And it starts you realizing, doesn't it, if you hadn't before, there is such an incredible dark side on the planet. It is here, and it is us as well. But it's in other people who've let it just flow right through them. And this evil is, it's there, isn't it? It's a real presence, and we've seen it over the last year.
Well, that was the thing when I read both those books. My whole attitude towards the Vatican as an entity changed, and what the Holy See is. And people would always say, "Oh, the church should really reform its ways and clean up its act and get out of things like gangster banking and messing with kids and all this nonsense they get up to." And then that made me realize that the Vatican is kind of like needs that. It's like this dualistic force, and it will never lose that darkness, because it's this kind of thing between kind of I don't know what it is. It's like the Demiurge and Lucifer in combat inside the Holy See. And this friction and this energy in there is really what creates spirituality from that. You know what I mean? It's like it allows you to determine, okay, if you're a regular Catholic, like for instance, the lockdown, you made a great example there. The Catholic bishops told the priest, don't go to give people the last rites on their deathbed. Horrible thing, right? Yeah. Especially here in rural Ireland, where you'd have old people who'd be very religious and they would be friends with the priest and things like that. That wickedness would have been broken by Catholic priests who said, screw it, I'm going to that man's house or that woman's house and giving them the last rites. I don't care what the Archbishop says. I find that, and I think that's what reading those two books really made me see that the evil of the Vatican is an intrinsic part of its existence.
It is, but then in a way, I think that the one thing that Christianity has done, it's hidden that dark side, because we're not allowed to admit we have one. because it's evil. When really it's just, if you have that dark thought, or you have that, though maybe I would like to do this, you think you've got to notice it and realize it's part of yourself and make a conscious decision not to do it.
And I think that's the real reason they went after the Cathars, because the Cathars were fully aware of the dark. They came from that Gnostic, Neoplatonist, Bogomil type thing that, like, this world is as horrible as it's as beautiful, it's wicked as it's good. And the conflict between the two is what creates the life, the greatness, this kind of the richness of existence. And therefore, they had a rich and beautiful existence because they were fully aware that it was a constant yin and yang kind of thing inside the soul of man.
Exactly. There's that two sides. How can there be two sides of everything if there isn't a two sides of good and bad? But I just imagine if everybody was taught that from a young age, that there's an evil in you as much as there is good, because you need to know that. And as you go through life, try and emphasis on the central path. Because if you're too good, that's just as bad as being too evil to me.
I know. Well, that's what Jung's whole thing was, that Western man was diseased by not integrating the shadow.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's why he was pushing things like paganism and Nordic. The whole thing of, like, he realized that even though he wasn't anti-Christian himself, that was the problem. And he came from a kind of a dark Christian tradition, Calvinism, which is like Puritanism. So that's probably a bit better because it does kind of punish you while you're alive. I think Calvinists believe they all go to hell or something crazy like that. But that was it. It's madness. And I think a healthy person, an individual that integrates their shadow, ultimately becomes a healthy, successful person. A society like the Cathars, who integrate their shadow, become a healthy, successful society. But the Vatican wanted its functionality so it could control it.
Yeah, and they would take over spirituality for you, wouldn't they? They would say, like, don't even bother looking at your good side because we'll do all that.
Yeah,
just do as you're told, really. So
penance and, plenary indulgences and things like Henry VIII paying people to this day to pray his soul out of hell. You know that? Did you know that? To this day, there are people who meet in Westminster Abbey. Westminster Cathedral, not Westminster Abbey, Westminster Cathedral, the Catholic one in London, and they pray to get Henry VIII out of hell for what he did with Anne Boleyn. And really? He left the fund. To this day, it still goes on. Yeah.
And he was the one that got rid of Catholicism.
Yeah, when Anne Boleyn, marrying her and then killed her. But yeah, apparently when he died, he left the fund that still exists to this day to get people to pray him out of hell. The chantries, my God. Yeah.
I tell you, there's a few people now that are going to need to cough up, I tell you.
I wanted to ask too, while we're on the subject of kind of dualism and all this, and then also too with orders being infiltrated. I know this is kind of a gray area that's difficult to talk about, but Freemasonry and the actual order of Freemasons, my view on it is, it seems like Freemasonry is another one of these things, schools that's been handed down, and in the times of Mozart and in that era, may have been a legitimate bona fide mystery school. However, it seems like sometime maybe in the 19th century, that order may have been infiltrated by whether it's the Jesuits or whomever, whatever shadowy group. Does it seem like
it was the Bavarian Illuminati? It was banking interest in Frankfurt is really what did it, because they wanted the money of European royals, and this is why they read the idea of republicanism.
Okay, that was Adam Weishaupt.
Yeah, it was bankers in Frankfurt. Yeah.
Okay, so that's when that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They were there for a period of time, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think this is, as Jeff said, it's an issue, isn't it? Because the teachings would come down to the Knights Templar, and people now they say whether the Knights Templar is good or whether the Knights Templar is bad, and I can't really answer that. And then they came, and the teachings that were passed down to Freemasonry through, like you say, through Scotland with the Bruce and all that sort of teaching. Then I think it was good teaching, which has been corrupted, yeah. But your obvious lad who goes down the Masonic Lodge, he just wants to meet his friends with a few beers and maybe make a few deals, which is fair enough. But I think it's higher up, isn't it? It's the top.
Right.
And that's what
it depends on the lodge too. Like the Grand Orient in Paris is very sinister. I mean, Macron is a member of that, and there's a lot of the kind of wheeling, dealing out of NATO and stuff happens in that lodge. Where you, like you said, the local one where the lads are just meeting for a few beers, they're harmless. In fact, I know one, and I do good in the community. I know one guy who's, when he was 15, both his mother and father died of cancer, and the local Freemasonic lodge took, their family, and they got him a flat, and they paid the rent, and they put him through school, and they put him through like a top university and paid for everything, and he is a happy person today with a lovely family, and he said he totally owes that to the Masons, because he knows what would have happened if they hadn't have intervened and took care of him. So it's the same thing, either good or bad. It depends which ones you're talking about.
What I do worry about them though is there's a lot of energy that's produced in the rituals, and a lot that I don't know that they are, why they're doing these rituals and everything. But if you do have like a hierarchy, then I'm sure that the people at the top can use that energy, if you know what I mean. They can suck that energy up and turn that to nefarious purposes. That's the only reason that I would never join the organization, because you don't know who's sucking your energy up there, if that does not make sense.
And I think this, I definitely can see this within a spiritual order that my parents were involved in, where it's the same kind of thing. That group, when it started off, was, you could consider it a mystery school, and then something came along, probably the same entity, whether that's a non-corporeal entity or banking entity or something, took it over, and then the same thing as the work and rituals are done. It's like that all that charge is being pulled up to some place.
Yeah.
And when it's got that kind of influence.
You think of how many of these ceremonies and rituals have been carried out throughout the planet. That's a hell of a lot of energy that you created to be used.
Yeah.
Well, when you see the power of Freemasonry in something like the U.S. Navy, where it's huge, one of the largest naval navies in the world, and it's a very big Freemasonic club. That.
Yeah. So, what was the U.S. Founded on Freemasonic principles? Then, because that's when I look around and look at Washington D.C. and so I look at it, and I'm like, people say this is a Christian nation, and I'm like, I think this is a Freemasonic nation or something like that.
No, Thomas Paine, who coined the term the United States of America, and he wrote that very influential book, Common Sense. He also wrote a phenomenal history of Freemasonry. He was an ardent Freemason, and he was the Anglo-American philosopher. He absolutely said the United States was built on Freemasonic concepts. And so did George Washington. In fact, George Washington wanted the Illuminati to actually come through the United States and help set up the Republic.
Right.
That's why his statue is Baphomet. You ever see the statue of him as Baphomet?
Yep. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, because it's like, to me, it seems like that might have been that era where there was still Freemasonry as a concept wasn't necessarily infiltrated yet, but might have been right at that tipping point where
it's how you use. It's neither good nor bad, is it? It's like a hammer. Right. You can make a house, or you can cave something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, because the teachings are so pure and so good that you could use them whichever way you want. And I think originally they were good. I mean, I think the people who founded the United States had incredibly good intentions.
Yeah, but it lasted for a few years.
In Ireland at that period, the Freemasons were held very highly in regard. You had like the Society of United Irishmen, and because they were ending sectarianism, they were bringing Catholics and Protestants together as this kind of new Republican thing. And so it was seen as a very positive thing at that time, where in France, they were very suspicious of the Grand Orient and its relationship to like Robespierre and, the Reign of Terror and the Committee on Public Safety and the persecution of Catholics in southern France, and doing crazy things like removing the statue of the Virgin Mary from Notre Dame and replacing it with Goddess of Reason. It's funny, like, it's like today when you see what happened in France, in post-revolutionary France, with the Committee on Public Safety and things like that. It's very similar to like cancel culture and this
things go around, don't they?
Yeah, today, yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like in the U.S. that may have lasted for a few years, maybe, and then it's just whatever you're talking about the bank or whatever global interest it is that took that over, and this country isn't necessarily run on those principles anymore. Where it may have worked if it had been kind of kept in that same direction. But Neil, as you're saying, it's a tool, and that tool got used one way, and it seems like this was supposed to be an experiment. To the United States was supposed to be an experiment to make a place where anybody could become a sovereign individual and have their own domain over their life and over the land that they own. But that very quickly got infiltrated and turned kind of into a socialist experiment by the 20th century, and has been that way ever since. And the tool, if it's Freemasonry, has been used maybe against the people of the United States up until this point in time. And it's like it's with all the cities, you can see the way the geometry of things are laid out. That this is obviously was meant to be used a certain way, but it's not circa 2021 now. It's been long forgotten and paved over.
Yeah, it's the West is dying it, but it's a bit like when you talk about the infiltration. You can see this whole idea of infiltration going back through history. If you look at the beginning of the Knights Templar and the Cistercian order, they were not, from my research, they weren't a Catholic order at all. But through the guy's name I can't remember, who became a member of the Cistercian order. He was a member of the same family as the Knights Templars, and he took over the Cistercians, and then it became, it was still the Catholic order, but all his family and friends joined. So it wasn't really. And you see this happening time and time and time again. It's always, it seems like it's the same group of families that seem to infiltrate in. They don't stand up and say we're here, but they infiltrate in and take over for their purposes.
Yeah, particularly the black nobility in Italy, the Pisos and all that. Their fingers are all over history, especially from that period up until like the Renaissance and into the Enlightenment. They're everywhere. I think not the current Pope, a couple of popes back was a Piso. So they're very. And again, we don't know about them. It's like what Andy Garcia called them in Godfather 3, The Secret Unknowns. We just basically know who they possibly are. Speaking of the Templars, Neil, what do you think was the treasure they found under the Temple Mount? Was it money or was it knowledge?
Well, that's unfair. What did they find? Right, okay, so that goes back to when the Temple Mount was these families that we're talking about. That are the family of, they're known as the Rex Deus families, which is like the King God families. So they were the high priests of Solomon's Temple. So whatever knowledge and there were religious artifacts, and there was also, I think, everything that the Knights Templars used to be able to suddenly build cathedrals, that was in there. And because there was only 9 of them, wasn't there? They went out there for 9 years, dug underneath the temple, and came back with all this amazing knowledge. And we'll never know exactly what it is. But whatever it was the foundation of what the cathedrals became, and the whole ethos of the Templars and the traditions that they followed. So maybe the Ark of the Covenant and all the manuscripts. They said that the Cathars got the manuscripts as well. And this is a massive story, isn't it? And then they may probably ended up in the hands of the Nazis at the end of the Second World War. And that was lots of companies were formed out of whatever knowledge it was. So it was some sort of powerful body of knowledge. That's all I can say, because nobody actually knows.
You can kind of see that, like the early Middle Ages is completely different than the late Middle Ages. The late Middle Ages is, the massive buildings of not only the big Gothic cathedrals, but also the repair of a lot of European cities that had decayed since the Roman era ended, and infrastructure and public works. In fact, you wonder if the Renaissance would have ever happened if the Templars didn't bring this stuff back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you do wonder about that. But that's absolutely, that's what I believe as well. I believe that they came, whatever they found, it was like a blueprint. It was like a great reset of its time. It was a blueprint to get Europe moving again, and boy, did it, yeah.
And they didn't just find it. I mean, they obviously went to get it.
Yeah,
that's what. So they knew it was there. So they went back particularly to get it, because she always got these 9 knights turning up with the King. Hello, King. Was it King Baldwin, or the king of whoever it was at the time? It was Baldwin, wasn't it? But is it okay if we take over your Temple Mount and sort of live there? Well, it ain't gonna happen, is it? But it gave them the prime spot right on top of the Temple Mount to build their own headquarters, and they just had to dig down. So they went to get it. So they knew it existed.
But I also believe they brought back something, a very powerful, dark spiritual force, or some powerful force. And that's what's in the crypt at Rosslyn Castle, or Rosslyn Chapel. I've no doubt about that. I've no doubt about that Rosslyn Chapel, the Sinclairs had something. And it's almost like when you're in that crypt and against that wall, it's like being in it's like the Devil's Foot in Chernobyl. You feel a tremendous energy's happening, power force, and it's behind that wall, whatever it was. And I think
down in the crypt.
Yeah, you know the way the crypt is 2 sides. You go, there's a left, but there's no right crypt. But it's that altar. You put your hand in front of it, and your hand starts freezing, and you can feel this cold energy moving up your body. Well, down the other crypt, there's a wall, and on the wall there's a statue called the Master of Terrors, which is people like in terror. And there's all pentagrams scratched into the wall and stuff like that. I think whatever I could sense it. Whatever the force is, it's behind that wall, and I believe it could even be Jehovah itself. It could be even the Ark of the Covenant, but there's something in there.
There's a dark feeling there, isn't there, when you go down. And more than it should be, yeah.
And I was very emotionally affected by it. And I went there with a bunch of students from Edinburgh University, and they were just like, they took me to see it after I did a talk there with Anthony Peake. And we had to actually literally grab onto trees outside, because we actually felt like our life force is being pulled out of us.
I wonder now if it's all changed. Maybe they've done something because now it's opened up to the public more often, and after the Da Vinci Code and everything.
Or did they move it out of there? Did they move it somewhere else?
I would be surprised, yeah. Because there's a lot down there that has been literally taken out of the vault, and now people just go down there. It doesn't have that, but he did have that feeling. Yeah. When I went years ago at the beginning, it had that feeling. And that was before the Da Vinci Code became massive and the whole world sort of moved in on it. So Sinclair was digging there, wasn't he? He did a bit of digging. But he just I couldn't find anything.
And that's Princess Diana's family, and they were on and off married into the royals, not just with her, but like the Dukes of Marlborough and all this stuff.
Churchill as well.
Yeah, Winston Churchill, yeah.
I'm curious, do you guys think that these discoveries, what you're just talking about, Thomas, about where you go near it and it makes your physically has an effect on you, is there something that could be like a cathode and an anode, where they could be literally just a pillar, or like even just a model pillar that has some kind of connection that, Neil, you were talking about when they went there onto the Temple Mount and they found something. Could that something have been just, if you want to call it a download into the person's consciousness or into their epigenetics that just switched on all this ancestral memory from the previous era, from just coming into contact with whatever was the cathode or the anode side of it, the positive or the negative side, one flowing out, one flowing in. And then when you go to the other one, where it's literally pulling all the life force out of you, where Thomas, you're saying you have to go outside and ground your body again, so you're not leaking.
I'd never thought of that, but now you say it, that could be so true, couldn't it? I mean, because the most important thing that they have are the 2 pillars, the Yakim and Boas of the temple.
And they could literally be real.
Yeah, I mean, but if you think of the Kabbalistic tree, you've got the Yakim and Boas, and they've got the central pillar, which is yourself. So maybe what you're saying is what they did. Maybe they knew that was the place to go to regain their knowledge and get some sort of download. I mean, I've had that sort of experience myself, the download experience, so I can understand that. So maybe that's exactly what happened. I never thought of that before.
Yeah, and there could be, it could have been the middle point between where maybe these physical pillars are somewhere. It could be inscribed on a Yakim and Boaz or something. It could literally be to artifacts that have this ability where, okay, you put it in the earth and that one's positive, and you put it in the earth and that one's negative, and you stand between them and it's like, oh fuck, here's this download that happens. Yeah.
Well, it's a fantastic idea, that.
Another place that has that effect is the Kappa in Mecca, the black cube that they all march around. I was talking to a Pakistani chap that actually was there, and he said that he described it just like the crypt in Rosnell Chapel. He said the closer you got to it, he said, and it wasn't just because it was a religious experience, because he wasn't a super devout Muslim. He went mainly because his parents were very religious. But he said that he was afraid to get too close to it because he could feel there's an energy inside it that could strike you down, like the way the Ark of the Covenant is described in the Bible, that if you touch it, it kills you. And so, it's fascinating stuff, this,
Yeah.
Like, it really is. I mean, the energy thing could be something that we have lost, which I think we have. With the whole idea of you got a stone circle, and as you go around, you've got a positive and a negative, and they call it the male and the female stones, don't they? They're all different ways around. So you end up with a sine wave, a sine wave going around the circle. So these things were important, obviously important to these people in the past, and they could feel the earth energies.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot more to it. The trouble is, we've lost our connection to it in a lot of ways, haven't we?
If you could phase lock yourself to it, it could probably be an amazing thing. And perhaps the reason it feels sinister to us is that we're not phase locked with it. And it's just energetic. And maybe that's what's going on with our bodies at the moment, with these weird effects we're all having. And we're not phase locked with the current changes in the Earth's cycle. Now, Neil, you have a conference coming up in Samhain on Halloween at the end of October. Can you tell us about that? And it's great that conferences are finally back. And tell us all about it, where it is, who's in it. Go through the guests.
Right, okay. It's the Mysterious Earth Conference. You see that? Am I coming up? I think. Am I coming up on screen now? I don't know.
Yeah, I can see it.
I can still see you. Still see Thomas. Right, okay. It's on the. It's the 14th year, and it's on the 30th and the 31st of October, and it's in Preston. But it's easy to find, very easy to find at the hall. It's Grimsby Village Hall. We can leave a link below, can't we? Yeah.
We'll leave the link. We'll leave the link to the tour or to the conference under the whole video during the whole show, and a link in the description.
Okay. So Hugh Newman, who I think you had on last week or the week before, he's going to talk about the giants. But that's a fascinating subject, isn't it? Because I'm convinced that giants exist now, just from hearing Hugh talk. So that's Hugh Newman. And then Peter Knight and Sue Wallace. Anybody who's into the megalithic world in England will know about Peter Knight. He's going to do 2 talks. The first one is Albion Dreamtime, Re-enchanting the Isle of Dragons. So
is he the chap that wrote that book, Stolen Symbols?
Yes.
That's a fantastic book. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Pete's been going for years. It's like down south. It's fantastic, Peter. And his second talk is prehistoric shamanism of southwest England. So that sounds pretty amazing. Robin Heath, who is an old. He's been going for years, hasn't he, Robin? He's one of the earliest megalithomania people. And we're very lucky to have Robin, actually. I don't think he really does talks anywhere. But anyway, it's Finding Atlantis, Our Last Legacy from Prehistory. So that's a subject we've spoken of a lot. And subtitle, Reading the Megalithic Language. So that's fascinating. Martin Morris. Martin is from Scotland. He's got a fantastic YouTube channel. But his talk is about the Aberdeenshire's recumbent stone circles. So,
which you don't hear a lot about.
No, you don't, and you should, because they're an absolute one-off. The recumbent stone where the moon goes across at certain times of the year. So Martin's an expert of the Scottish stone circles, which is fantastic. He's a good lad as well. Brian Halliwell is a really old mate of mine. He's a public speaker, and is going to talk about Christian. It's a Christian story. We went together on a tour, and we went to the Church of Saint Cosmain and Cosmas in Domain, and it's a mystical Christian story, and he's researched it from that visit. So he's going to talk about that. Very, very excellent speaker. Edward Foster is a local guy. I didn't know him till last year, and he came to last year's conference. Great interview. We managed to have a conference every year, even though we had one at the beginning of last year, one at the end of this year. Visions of Albion. He speaks of the old, the mysteries and the old stories that you're so well versed in. And at the same time, he can sing and play the flute and put different his artwork up and everything. It all melds in. And it was such a success last year. We've invited him back, and we've got a mystery speaker as well, who we can't announce at the moment, but that's is a very, very important speaker on the circuit, worldwide circuit, and he's going to be an absolute winner when we can announce him. So that's on the 30th and the 31st of October. So please come, because the one thing I don't want to do is have a hall with nobody in it.
What's the capacity of the hall?
Oh, you can get a couple of hundred people in it.
Right.
Without a problem.
Preston is dead easy to get to. It's between Scotland and the train line between Scotland and England and London.
Yep.
And it's near Manchester Airport. It's near Liverpool. It's everything's around. It's near everywhere, really. And you can even get to Ireland easy enough from it. And
absolutely, yeah.
How much are the tickets?
So for the weekend, £45 if you pay it in advance.
That's a bargain.
You can do that for the website. I know, crazy. Yeah. So and £50 on the day if you pay on the day, but paying in advance is a lot more easier for everybody, and that's 45, and you can it's just a button on the page. You just go straight through to payment.
And that's for the whole weekend.
Yeah.
Now, that's a steal. I mean, if people can't see what a deal that is, there's something wrong with them. That's fantastic. Wow, that's an amazing price you're putting that out for. And I mean, wow. I wish I wasn't a prisoner. I'd love to go myself, but we'll see. Maybe we'll.
Might not be.
Maybe we'll have an overthrow of the government here or something in the meantime, and I'll arrive. I'll arrive in a general's uniform or something. But like Idi Amin or something like that, yeah. So
we won't be able to call you T-Shot Thomas though. It'll have to be T-Shot Sheridan, won't it?
No, it'll be something. Yeah.
Can't show your first name.
Yeah, it'll be a commandant or something like that. Whatever. There's days I've been wishing it's been close to that, to be honest with you, in the last year.
I'll tell you about it.
But so yeah, this was brilliant. Thanks for coming on. And
that's been great.
Yeah, and I hope you come back. And we have to continue our tarot videos. We're both less busy during the winter or something because people will love them.
Definitely, yeah.
Jason, do you have any final comments you want to say to Neil?
Oh, Neil, this is great. I'm really glad we had you on the symposium here, and I definitely want to check out your mystery school there online as well. There's lots of this information that you talk about really, really indicates to me. So thanks for coming on today.
Brilliant. Thanks for inviting me. I do appreciate it, really.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Neil. And thank you, all of you, for listening into Beyond Room 313 Symposium. Don't forget, if you live in the north of England, you'd be mad if you don't go to that conference at that price. And support the conferences. They're it's like people in the music business. They're back. And help them. They've had a horrible year and a half, and so I think rather than spending it down the pub, do something like this. Make a holiday of it. Bring the family, bring the kids, and enjoy these things like these conferences. We really appreciated how wonderful things like rock concerts, comedy gigs, and conferences like this were, because they took them away from us for a year and a half. So hold on to what you have and attend these things and really support them. So thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next time on Beyond Room 313 Symposium.